When Richard installed hidden cameras in his 72-year-old grandma's room, he wanted proof. Proof that she was mistreating his great-granddaughter. Proof that it was time to send her to a nursing home. What the cameras recorded at 3 a.m. destroyed him. And now I'm going to tell you exactly what he saw. But before I do, I need you to understand something. This isn't a story about technologies, it's not a story about cameras. It's a story about what happens when you finally see what's been there all along, and if you've ever felt like someone loved you silently, expecting nothing in return, this story will break you. And if you've ever ignored someone who loved you, this story will make you cry. Stick around, because what I'm about to tell you, it could be about your own family. It could be about someone you know, someone you see every day, but never truly see, someone who does everything for you, without asking for a thing. And when you finish listening to this story, you're going to want to call that person. You're going to want to hug them. You're going to want to tell them what. You've never said, before it's too late. Plus, if right now you feel like life has been unfair to you, if you feel like no one sees your effort, if you feel like you're all alone in the world, this story is for you. And if you make it to the end, you're going to understand why some people are born to be silent angels. Richard Almeida was 42 years old when everything changed. He was a successful businessman, owner of 3 construction companies, a net worth of over $20 million. But there was something all his money couldn't buy: peace. Because in his 4-story mansion lived 4 people. Him, his wife Patricia, his 72-year-old grandma, Nana Josie, and Valentina, his 5-year-old daughter. Valentina was autistic, severely autistic, non-verbal, diagnosed at 2 years old, in 5 years of life. Valentina had never said a word, not one, not mommy, not daddy, not water, nothing, only screams. Screams that lasted for hours, screams that made nannies quit after a week, screams that made Patricia cry locked in the bathroom at 3 in the morning. Richard had hired the best specialists, therapists from New York City who charged $1,000 an hour, neurologists from Boston who had written books on childhood autism, psychologists from the United States who promised revolutionary methods, an occupational therapy team that came 3 times a week, a speech therapist specializing in nonverbal communication, a nutritionist who designed a special diet, gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, a sensory integration expert who filled Valentina's room with special equipment, therapeutic swings, weighted blankets, colored lights, specific music. He spent over $2 million on treatments. $2 million. Money that could buy a house, money that could secure the future of 3 families. And nothing worked. Valentina kept screaming, kept hitting her head against the wall, kept staring into nothing for hours. And Richard didn't know what to do anymore. There were nights when he locked himself in his office and cried, not from sadness, from helplessness, from rage, from frustration, from exhaustion. He wondered what he had done wrong, if he had worked too much during Patricia's pregnancy, if he had neglected something, if it was punishment for some sin he didn't remember committing. He wondered why his friends' children were normal, why they could go to parks, to parties, to restaurants, why they could talk, laugh, play, while Valentina could only scream. He couldn't understand why his daughter had been born like this. Why him? Why his family? Why Valentina? What had she done to deserve this? An innocent girl, trapped in a world she couldn't understand, in a body she couldn't control, in a mind that worked differently. Patricia told him it was God's punishment, that maybe they had done something wrong in another life, that maybe it was genetic, that maybe it was his fault for working so much during the pregnancy. And Richard didn't know what to answer, because he didn't have answers. No one did. The nannies came and went like ghosts. The first lasted a week, the second, 3 days. The third didn't even complete 24 hours. Valentina terrorized them with her screams, bit them, tore their hair out, threw everything she could find, and no amount of money was enough for them to stay. Richard even offered triple the normal salary. No one accepted. Everyone fled. Everyone except one person. Nana Josie had arrived at the mansion 3 years ago, not because she wanted to, because she had nowhere else to go. Let me tell you who Nana Josie was before arriving at that mansion. Josefa Maria dos Santos was born in 1953 in a poor neighborhood of Savannah, Georgia. Her father worked at the port, carrying bales of cotton. Her mother washed clothes for wealthy families. Josie was the 5th of 8 children. She didn't finish school. She had to work from the age of 9, first taking care of neighbors' children, then cleaning houses, then washing dishes in restaurants. At 17, she met George, a bricklayer with sad eyes and calloused hands. George was different from the other men in the neighborhood. He didn't drink, he didn't hit, he didn't yell. He worked from sunrise to sunset and brought all the money home. He looked at her as if she were the most beautiful woman in the world, even though she wore patched dresses and had hands cracked from so much washing. They got married 6 months later, in a small ceremony, without flowers and without a white dress and without a honeymoon, but with love, a lot of love. They had 4 children in 7 years, Maria, George Jr., Carla, and Richard, the father of the businessman who now ignored her. They were difficult but happy years. George worked in construction. Josie did laundry on the side. They didn't have much money, but the children never went hungry, never slept without a good-night kiss, never stopped feeling loved. But life wasn't kind to Nana Josie. In 1978, when she was 25 years old, George died. A poorly constructed wall collapsed on him at a construction site, a wall that the boss knew was in bad condition, a wall that should have been repaired weeks before, but the boss wanted to save money, and that saving cost George his life. He was 28 years old, 4 young children, a wife who loved him, and dreams he could never fulfill. Nana Josie was at home when the news arrived, washing clothes and singing, thinking about the lunch she would prepare for George, and then there was a knock at the door, and just like that, their world shattered. The boss refused to pay any compensation, claimed Jorge had been reckless, said it wasn't his fault, that he owed them nothing. The government offered no help. Back then, the poor had no rights, workers had no protection, widows had no voice, and Nana Josie was left all alone, with 4 young children constantly asking for their father. No money for the funeral, no education to secure a better job, no one to help her. She toiled away, cleaning the homes of the wealthy for 45 years, and when her body just couldn't take it anymore, when her knees could no longer kneel to scrub floors, when her hands could no longer wring out rags, she was left with only one option, to live with her grandson, Richard, the only one of her grandchildren who had any money, the only one who could support her. Patricia wasn't happy about the decision, not one bit, from day one. She made it clear that Nana Josie was a burden, a nuisance, just another mouth to feed. She gave her the smallest room in the house, a room in the basement, with no window, just an old bed and a shared bathroom, and she laid down the rules. Nana Josie wasn't allowed upstairs to the 2nd floor, ever. She couldn't use the main kitchen. She wasn't allowed to talk to guests. She couldn't be in the living room when company was over. It was as if she wanted her to be invisible. And Nana Josie, she obeyed, without complaining, without protesting. She would wake up early, drink her coffee alone in her room, and spend the day watching television on an old set Richard had given her. She barely spoke, hardly asked for anything. She was like a ghost that everyone preferred to ignore, and no one, absolutely no one, asked her how she was doing. No one asked if she needed anything. No one asked if she was sad. No one asked if she missed her home, if she missed her life, if she missed being someone. Patricia referred to her as the old lady when talking to her friends on the phone. She's such a burden, a total drag. She just eats, sleeps, and does nothing. She just sits there, taking up space. I don't know why Richard insisted on bringing her here. She should be in a nursing home with the other old folks. Her friends agreed wholeheartedly. Of course, honey, it's your house. You don't have to put up with that. Patricia would also badmouth her at dinner parties. When guests arrived, Nana Josie had to stay in the basement. "I don't want them to see her. It's embarrassing." An old country woman in a house like this. Richard said nothing. He should have defended his grandmother. He should have set some boundaries with his wife. But he was so busy working that he didn't even process what was happening. And silence. Silence is complicity. When you don't defend someone, you're siding with the attacker, even if you don't want to admit it. Nana Josie heard everything from her basement room. The walls were thin, and she had very good hearing. But she never said a word, never complained, never cried in front of anyone. She just waited for the moment she could do something useful, something that would prove she was still good for something, something that would justify her existence in that house. And that moment came when she met Valentina. The first time Nana Josie saw her great-granddaughter, something strange happened, something that can't be explained with words, something that only those who have experienced profound loss can understand. Valentina was 2 years old, and she was in the middle of a full-blown meltdown, screaming, banging her head against the floor, pulling out her hair, biting everything she could find. The nanny on duty was crying in a corner, her face red from the blows Valentina had given her. Patricia was screaming that she couldn't take it anymore, that she was going to lose her mind, that they needed to have her committed somewhere. Richard, as always, was not home. He was at the office, signing contracts, making money, running away from the reality of his own house, and Nana Josie, who had come upstairs to get a glass of water because the one in the basement was broken and no one had bothered to fix it, froze in the doorway, not because of the noise, not because of the violence, not because of the chaos, but because she recognized something in Valentina's eyes, something in the way she rocked back and forth, something in the tone of her screams, something she had seen before, many years ago. In another little girl, a little girl who no longer existed, a little girl that the world had destroyed, a little girl that Nana Josie hadn't been able to save. And in that moment, standing in the doorway, with her heart beating so hard she could hear it, Nana Josie made a decision that would change everything. This time, I won't fail. But there was something that no one knew, something that happened when everyone was asleep, something that the cameras were about to reveal. The idea for the cameras came from Patricia, one Tuesday night, after Valentina had a meltdown that lasted 4 hours. Patricia exploded. "I'm done, Richard, I'm done. That child needs to go to a clinic. And your grandmother is only making things worse. I saw her today, going into Valentina's room, without permission. I saw her." Richard tried to calm her down. "Patricia, my grandmother is 72 years old. She's not going to hurt anyone." "You don't know that. You're never here. You don't see what I see. That's why I want cameras. I want to know exactly what she's doing when we're not looking." Richard hesitated, but Patricia insisted, and 2 days later, a technician installed 6 cameras in the mansion, 1 in the living room, 1 in the kitchen, 1 in the hallway on the 2nd floor, 1 in Valentina's room, 1 in Nana Josie's room, and 1 in the backyard. Cameras with night vision, cameras that recorded 24/7, cameras that sent the footage directly to Richard's phone. Patricia smiled when the technician finished. "Now, we're going to see the truth." Richard said nothing, but inside, he felt something uneasy, something he couldn't explain. It was as if he were betraying his own grandmother, the woman who had raised him when his mother was working, the woman who made him soup when he was sick, the woman who told him stories to help him fall asleep. But Patricia was right, wasn't she? They needed to know the truth. If you think you know what's going to happen next, you're wrong, because what the cameras captured was so much more than anyone expected, so much more for the first 3 days. The cameras showed nothing special. Nana Josie would get up at 6 a.m., drink coffee, watch television, eat alone, go to bed at 9 p.m. Valentina had her meltdowns. Patricia ignored her or yelled at her. The nannies came and went, everything normal, everything expected. But on the fourth night, something changed. It was 2:47 a.m. Richard was in his office, catching up on emails. His cell phone buzzed. Movement alert. Camera 5. Nana Josie's room. Richard opened the app, and what he saw froze him to the bone. Nana Josie was standing in the middle of the darkness. Her eyes were wide open, staring at the door, like she was waiting for something. Richard felt a chill run down his spine. What the heck is she doing awake at this hour? Then, Nana Josie moved. Slowly. She left her room, walked up the stairs, and stopped in front of Valentina's door. Richard switched to camera 4 and saw his grandmother open the door. She went inside and closed it behind her. Richard's heart started to race. Why is my grandma in my daughter's room at 3 a.m.? His fingers trembled as he changed the camera angle. And then, he saw it. Valentina was awake, sitting up in bed, rocking back and forth, like she always did before a meltdown. Nana Josie walked over, slowly, unhurried. She sat on the edge of the bed and began to sing. Richard turned up the volume. It was a song he had never heard before, a soft melody, words in a language he didn't recognize. It wasn't Portuguese, it wasn't Spanish, it sounded African. Nana Josie sang with her eyes closed, in a raspy but sweet voice, with a tenderness that Richard had never seen in her. And Valentina stopped rocking. She was still, completely still, looking at her great-grandmother. Richard couldn't believe what he was seeing. Valentina never stood still. Never. In her 5 years of life, Richard hadn't seen his daughter stay still for more than 30 seconds, not even when she was asleep. Even sleeping, she moved, she jerked, she whimpered, she cried in her dreams. The therapist said it was impossible to calm her down without medication. They'd tried melatonin, they'd tried mild sedatives, they'd tried antihistamines, all so she could sleep a few hours straight. And nothing worked, and nothing. But there she was, still, silent, looking at a 72-year-old woman singing in the dark, without medication, without special equipment, without revolutionary techniques, just an old woman, a song, and love. Richard couldn't take his eyes off the screen. It was like watching magic, real magic. Magic that didn't cost $2 million. Magic that didn't come from specialists. Magic that came from an old lady that everyone thought was useless. If this story is making you feel something, right now, if you feel something squeezing your chest, it's because you know this is real, because you know someone like Nana Josie, because maybe you are Nana Josie, maybe you're the person who does everything in silence, who never gets credit, who never gets thanked, who just keeps going because someone has to. If that's you, this story is for you. The song lasted almost 10 minutes. When it ended, Nana Josie did something that Richard would never forget. She opened her arms, and Valentina went to her. She laid down in her great-grandmother's lap and closed her eyes. Richard watched his daughter fall asleep, calm, at peace, for the first time in 5 years. Nana Josie stayed there, without moving, with Valentina in her arms, for 2 hours, until 5 a.m. Then, with infinite care, she laid the girl in bed and tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and left the room without making a sound, as if she had never been there. Richard closed the app. His hands were shaking. His eyes were full of tears, and he only had one question on his mind. How long has she been doing this? The next day, Richard cancelled all his meetings. He called his assistant. I'm not going to the office today or tomorrow or the day after. Cancel everything. The assistant was surprised. Mr. Almeida, you have a meeting with investors from... Cancel it, all of it. He hung up the phone, went to the kitchen, made a cup of coffee, closed the door to his office, turned off his second phone, disconnected the internet from his work computer. and sat down in front of the screen as alone, in silence, without distractions. He opened the camera app and started reviewing the recordings, all of them, from the first day, hour by hour, minute by minute, second by second. He spent 8 hours watching videos, without eating, without going to the bathroom, without answering the calls that vibrated on his turned-off phone, without moving from the chair. Patricia knocked on the door twice. Richard didn't answer. She thought he was on an important call. She didn't know that her husband was watching his world collapse on a computer screen. She didn't know that each video made him feel smaller, more ashamed, more guilty. And what he discovered destroyed him. Nana Josie had been going to Valentina's room every night, since the cameras were installed. From before, probably, years maybe. Every night, between 2 and 3 a.m. when everyone was asleep, the 72-year-old woman climbed the stairs with her worn-out knees, entered the room, sang, and calmed the girl that no one else could calm, without saying anything to anyone, without asking for recognition, without expecting gratitude. She just did it. But that wasn't the most shocking thing. The most shocking thing came in the recording from day 7. It was 3:17 a.m. Nana Josie was singing as always. Valentina was calm as always, but then something different happened. Valentina raised her hand, slowly, and touched her great-grandmother's face. Richard couldn't breathe. Valentina didn't touch anyone. Never. The therapists had tried for years to get her to make physical contact, but she rejected every touch. She pulled away. She screamed. She hit herself. And now, there she was, touching the face of a 72-year-old woman, with her little fingers, gently, as if she was discovering something for the first time. Nana Josie didn't move. She stood perfectly still, letting the girl touch her, letting the girl explore. And then, Valentina did something impossible. She looked Nana Josie in the eyes, directly, without looking away. For the first time in her life, the eyes of a 5-year-old girl meeting the eyes of a 72-year-old woman, 2 worlds connecting, 2 souls recognizing each other, in the darkness of a room at 3 a.m., while the rest of the world slept, while Patricia dreamed of nursing homes, while Richard's millions couldn't buy what was happening. Valentina looked at her great-grandmother, and for a moment, for just a brief, sacred moment, it wasn't an autistic child looking at an old woman. It was one soul looking into another. No barriers, no diagnoses, no labels, just 2 human beings, connected by something science can't explain. Richard had to pause the video. He couldn't breathe. His daughter was making eye contact, something the best neurologists in the country had said she might never achieve, and she was doing it with her great-grandmother at 3 a.m. in a darkened room, while an African lullaby floated in the air. Richard wept. He cried like he hadn't cried in years. He cried from shame, from gratitude, from rage at himself, because he realized something terrible. While he was paying millions to specialists, while he was searching for solutions overseas, while he was ignoring his grandmother and treating her like a burden, she was doing what no one else could do, silently, asking for nothing, every night, for 3 years, over 1,000 nights, over 1,000 times climbing those stairs with her aching knees, over 1,000 times singing until Valentina drifted off to sleep, over 1,000 times sneaking back down to the basement before dawn so no one would know, over 1,000 nights on her knees climbing stairs, over 1,000 sunrises returning to her cold basement room, over 1,000 times keeping the secret, because Nana Josie never sought recognition, never told anyone what she was doing, never complained about the stairs, never mentioned the pain in her joints, never asked for a room closer to Valentina. She just did it, night after night, silently, like she had done her entire life. Because that's what people who really love do. They don't expect applause. They don't expect medals. They don't expect anyone to notice their sacrifice. They just love. And true love doesn't need witnesses. And Richard had no idea. No one had any idea. He wondered how many times Patricia had complained about Valentina's restless sleep. How many times they had increased her medication. How many times they had blamed the nannies. When, all along, the whole damn time, it had been his grandmother, caring for her, loving her, saving her, asking for nothing in return. Richard felt like the worst human being in the world, the blindest, the deafest, the most ungrateful, and he knew he had to do something. That afternoon, Richard did something he had never done before. He went down to the basement and knocked on his grandmother's door. Nana Josie opened the door, surprised. "Richard, honey, is everything all right?" It wasn't a question. It was a statement. The voice of a woman who had lived long enough to recognize when something important was about to happen. Richard couldn't speak. He just hugged her and cried into her shoulder, just like when he was a little boy. When he could finally speak, Richard told her everything. The cameras, the recordings, what he had seen. Nana Josie listened in silence. And when Richard finished, she said just one thing. "I knew about the cameras, honey." Richard looked at her, confused. "How?" "I saw the technician installing them." "I'm not foolish, Richard. I know what a camera looks like. But then why didn't you say anything? Why did you keep going to Valentina's room knowing you were being recorded?" Nana Josie smiled, a sad, wise smile. "Because I'm not doing it to be seen, Richard. I'm doing it because that little girl needs me, and I need her." That night, Richard asked her a question that had been burning inside him for days. "Grandma, that song, the one you sing to Valentina, what is it?" Nana Josie was silent for a long moment, her eyes filled with tears, and then she spoke. "It was a song my mother used to sing to me, and her mother to her, and so on for generations. It comes from Africa, from before we were brought here. I don't know exactly what the words say, but I know what they mean. They mean you're safe, that you're not alone, that someone loves you." Richard nodded, moved. But then Nana Josie said something that completely shattered him. "I had a daughter, Richard. Your Aunt Martha. You never knew her. She died before you were born. She was 19 years old." Richard felt a void in his stomach. He had never heard of an Aunt Martha. What happened to her? Nana Josie took a deep breath, and what she said next broke Richard's heart. Martha was special, like Valentina. She didn't speak. She didn't make eye contact. The doctors back then didn't know what it was. They called her retarded, crazy, possessed. They said it was God's punishment for my sins, that I should take her to an asylum, that I should forget about her. Nana Josie's voice trembled. But I knew it wasn't any of that. I knew she was just different, that she had a different way of seeing the world, and that she deserved love like anyone else. Richard felt the air grow heavy. Martha was my third daughter. She was born in 1972. She was beautiful. She had her father's big eyes, my mother's smile. But she never spoke, never made eye contact, never played with other children. She would sit alone, staring at the wall, rocking back and forth, just like Valentina. Richard felt a chill. And the song you sing to Valentina. Nana Josie smiled through her tears. It was the only way to calm her. The only way. I tried everything. Medicines, prayers, home remedies, nothing worked. Until one night, desperate, I started singing to her. The song my mother sang to me, and Martha. Martha became still, for the first time in her life. She looked at me and fell asleep in my arms. The old woman's voice cracked. From then on, every night, for 17 years, I sang her that song, every night, without fail. Richard felt the tears streaming down his face. What happened to her? How did she die? Nana Josie closed her eyes. One day I took her to the market, just for a moment, just to buy bread. She was 19 years old. She was already grown. I thought she could stay alone for a minute while I paid. Just 1 minute. And when I turned around, she was gone. I looked for her all over the market. I shouted her name. I ran through the streets. I begged for help. No one had seen her. We looked for her for 3 days. The police, the neighbors, the whole community. I walked day and night, without eating, without sleeping, shouting her name until I lost my voice, and on the 3rd day, they found her in the river. Nana Josie stopped. Her voice trembled. Her hands trembled. Her whole body trembled with the weight of a memory she had kept hidden for over 50 years. She was sitting on the bank, looking at the water, as if she was waiting for it, as if she knew she was going to find it there. They say she drowned, that it was an accident. But I know the truth. I know the world was just too cruel to her, too noisy, too confusing, and she just wanted peace, silence, calm, and she found it in the river. Tears streamed down the old woman's face. For years, I blamed myself. I wondered what would have happened if I hadn't left her alone, if I had been more patient, if I had understood what she needed better, if the world had been different, if the doctors had known then what they know now about autism. Nana Josie looked at Richard with an intensity he would never forget. But when I saw Valentina, when I saw her eyes, when I saw how she rocked just like Marta, when I saw that the world was treating her just as badly, I knew God was giving me another chance, not to save her. She doesn't need to be saved. She's not broken. She's just different, like Marta was, and she deserves to be loved exactly as she is, without anyone trying to change her, without anyone trying to cure her, just to love her. Every day I have left, every night, every song, every hug, until my last breath. Richard hugged his grandma, and in that hug, he understood something that would change his life forever. Love isn't measured in money. It's not measured in treatments. It's not measured in specialists. It's measured in presence, in consistency, in being there, when no one is watching. That same night, Richard talked to Patricia. He showed her the videos. He told her the story of Aunt Marta. Patricia cried, out of shame, out of regret, out of guilt for how she had treated Nana Josie for the past 3 years. And when she finished crying, she said something Richard never expected to hear. We have to change everything. The changes started the next day. The basement room was closed. Richard called a moving company. 3 men went down to the basement to pack Nana Josie's things. There wasn't much to pack. An old suitcase with worn clothes, some yellowed photos, a rosary from her mother, and a rag doll, an old doll, worn out, with one eye missing. When Richard asked about the doll, Nana Josie was silent for a moment. It was Marta's. I made it with my own hands when she was 3 years old. She never let go of it, until the day she died. Richard felt a lump in his throat. I can give it to Valentina. Nana Josie smiled. That's why I kept it all these years, waiting to find another little girl who needed it. Nana Josie was moved to the 2nd floor, onto a bright room, with large windows, with her own bathroom, with a view of the garden. Richard had had everything remodeled, new curtains, new furniture, new bed. A wide, comfortable bed for her aching knees, an armchair by the window to watch the sunset, a new TV, not the old appliance from the basement, and most importantly, next to Valentina's room, with a connecting door, so she could go see her without having to climb stairs with her worn-out knees. When Nana Josie saw the room, she cried, not from sadness, from joy. It was the first time in years that someone had given her something, the first time someone had thought of her, the first time she felt seen, valued, important, human. For 3 years she had lived in the basement as if she were invisible, as if she were an old piece of furniture that nobody wants but nobody dares to throw away. She had eaten alone more than 1,000 times. She had spent Christmas nights alone while the family celebrated upstairs. She had heard Patricia call her a nuisance, a burden, a useless old woman, and she had never complained. She had never asked for anything. She had never demanded respect, because that's how she had been raised. The women of her generation didn't complain. They endured. They suffered in silence. They kept going. But now, standing in that bright room, with the new curtains and the comfortable bed and the view of the garden, Nana Josie allowed herself to feel something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Hope that her last years would be different. Hope that she would finally be treated like family. Hope that her silent love had finally been seen. Patricia changed too. Not overnight, but she changed. She started greeting Nana Josie in the mornings, asking her if she needed anything, including her in family meals, treating her like what she was, family. It wasn't easy for Patricia to admit that she had been wrong, that she had mistreated a woman who only wanted to help, that she had judged without knowing, but she did it, little by little, day by day. And Nana Josie forgave her, without resentment, without reproach, because that's what people who have suffered a lot do. They forgive, because they know what it's like to need forgiveness. But the changes didn't end there. Richard hired a therapist specializing in autism, not to replace his grandmother, but to work with her, to learn from her, to understand what she was doing that worked so well. The therapist was amazed. "What your grandmother is doing has a name," he said. "It's called sensory regulation through predictability. The singing, always at the same time, always the same melody, gives Valentina a structure that her brain can process. It's exactly what the best protocols recommend. Only she discovered it on her own, without studying, without training, just with love." Richard felt pride, a pride he had never felt for his grandmother. The following months were of transformation. Valentina began to improve, not miraculously, not overnight, but consistently. She began to tolerate physical contact with other people besides her great-grandmother. She began to look her parents in the eyes. She began to respond to her name. Small victories, enormous victories, each one celebrated as if it were a miracle, because it was. The therapist documented everything, recorded videos, took notes, measured progress. And after 6 months, he presented his findings to Richard. "Your daughter has improved more in these 6 months than in the previous 5 years, combined." Richard couldn't believe it. "How is that possible?" The therapist smiled. "There are many theories, but I have a simple one. Your grandmother gives her something that no therapist can give: unconditional presence. She's not there to cure her. She's not there to change her. She's there because she loves her. And autistic children. They feel the difference. They know who accepts them as they are. And they respond to that." Richard thought about all the millions he had spent, about all the specialists he had hired, about all the experimental treatments, about all the flights to other countries looking for answers, through all those nights that Patricia cried in frustration, through all the times she thought about giving up. And none of it, absolutely none of it, had achieved what a 72-year-old woman with no formal education, no training, no degrees, no diplomas, had accomplished with a song and a hug. A woman who couldn't read or write, a woman who had cleaned houses her whole life, a woman who slept in a basement while he lived in a mansion, a woman that he had treated as if she didn't even exist. That woman had done more for Valentina than all the experts in the world combined, And Richard realized something painful. It wasn't just that the specialists had failed, it was that he had failed. He had failed to see what was right in front of his eyes. He had failed to listen to his grandma. He had failed to give her a chance. He had failed as a grandson, as a father, as a human being. And now he had to live with that truth. If this story is teaching you something, so if it's changing the way you see the elderly people in your life, then it's fulfilling its purpose. Because we need to remember. Remember that experience is worth more than degrees, that love is worth more than money, that the people we ignore and might be the most important. And then one day something happened that no one expected. It was a Sunday afternoon. Nana Josie was sitting in the garden soaking up the sun. Valentina was beside her, playing with a rag doll. An old doll. The same doll that had belonged to Aunt Martha over 50 years ago. Nana Josie had given it to Valentina the day she moved into her new room, and Valentina never let it go. She slept with it. She ate with it. She took it everywhere. Richard and Patricia were in the kitchen preparing lunch when they heard something that made them drop everything in their hands. A voice. A small voice. A voice they had never heard before. Joe, sigh. Richard ran to the garden, and what he saw left him paralyzed. Valentina was standing, looking at her great-grandmother, with her mouth open, and she said it again, Josie. Nana Josie remained motionless, with tears streaming down her wrinkled cheeks. And then she opened her arms. Valentina ran to her. They embraced, and the little girl repeated the word, over and over. Josie, 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 if you're crying right now, it's okay. It's okay to cry. It's okay to feel. It's okay to remember the people who loved you in silence. The grandparents who are no longer with us. The parents who never said, I love you, but showed it every day. The invisible people who did everything for you without expecting anything in return. This story is for them, and for you, so that you never forget. It was Valentina's first word. In 5 years of life, 1,825 days of silence, more than 43,000 hours without a single word, and now, a word. A single word, but the most important word in the world. Think about it for a moment. A child's first word. Parents dream of that moment. They wait for it. They yearn for it. They imagine it will be mama or dada, a word that validates all the sacrifice, all the love, all the effort. But Valentina's first word wasn't mama. It wasn't dada. It wasn't water or food or toy. It wasn't any of the words that the therapist had tried to teach her for 3 years. It was Josie, the name of the woman who loved her in silence for years, the woman that everyone ignored, the woman that everyone wanted to send to the nursing home, the woman who sang every night while the world slept, without asking for anything in return. The neighbors heard the shouts of joy. They thought something bad had happened, that someone was hurt, that there was an emergency, but it was the opposite. It was the sound of a miracle that had taken 5 years to arrive, 1,825 days, 43,800 hours of waiting, 2,628,000 minutes of silence, and finally, a word. A miracle made of patience, of consistency, of sleepless nights, of stairs climbed with worn-out knees, of songs sung in the darkness, of pure and unconditional love, the kind of love that isn't taught in universities, the kind of love that isn't bought with money, the kind of love that only people who have suffered a lot know, and who choose to keep loving despite everything. Richard knelt beside them. Patricia did too. And the 4 of them embraced. A family. Finally. A real family. For the first time. The days that followed were different. Everything was different. The air in the house was different. There was no more tension. There were no more awkward silences. There were no more looks of disdain. There was laughter. There were conversations. There was love. Richard started spending more time with his grandma. He asked her about her life, about her childhood, about her husband, about her other children, about Martha, especially about Martha. And Nana Josie told stories, stories she had never told anyone, stories of pain, stories of loss, stories of survival, stories of love. And Richard listened. For the first time in his life, he listened, not to respond, not to offer an opinion, just to understand, to know the woman who had raised his father, the woman who had suffered more than he ever would, the woman who, despite everything, kept loving, kept giving, kept being a light in the darkness. Patricia also changed her relationship with Nana Josie. They started cooking together, old family recipes from Nana Josie's side, dishes that hadn't been made in decades, a stew just like her mother made, a seafood stew just like her grandmother made, fresh corn pudding, handmade coconut candies. And while they cooked, they talked. Patricia discovered that Nana Josie was funny, that she had an extraordinary dark humor, that she told jokes that made her laugh until she cried, that she was wise in a way that books don't teach. And she felt ashamed. Ashamed of the 3 years she had treated her like a burden, of the 3 years she hadn't looked her in the eyes, of the 3 years she hadn't given her a chance. But Nana Josie held no grudges. When Patricia apologized, crying, Nana Josie just hugged her and said, "Honey, there's nothing to forgive. We all do the best we can with what we know, and now we know more. That's what matters." Today, as I tell you this story, it's been 2 years since that day in the garden. Valentina is 7 years old now. She's still autistic. She always will be. But she talks, not much, not fluently, but she talks. She says about 20 words. Nana Josie is still her favorite. Nana Josie is 74 years old. Her knees are worse. She can barely walk anymore, but it doesn't matter, because she doesn't have to climb stairs anymore. Her room is next to Valentina's, and every night, at 3 a.m., the connecting door opens, and a 7-year-old girl walks to her great-grandmother's bed. She lies down next to her and listens to the song, the same song. The African song that has passed from generation to generation, the song that says you are safe, that you are not alone, that someone loves you. Richard stopped working 14 hours a day. Now he's home before 6. Every evening. Not to supervise and not to control. To be there. To be part of something he almost lost because he was too busy making money. He sold one of his 3 companies, the one that made the most money, the one that took up the most time. His partners thought he was crazy, but Richard explained to them, "What good is having 3 companies if I don't have time to see my daughter say her first words? What good is having 20 million if I don't know my own grandmother? What good is success if I fail as a person? What good is building an empire if I destroy my family?" His partners looked at him like he was nuts. One of them even laughed. "You're going to regret this. The market is at its peak. It's insane to sell now." Richard smiled. "The insanity is spending 10 years of your life in an office and not knowing the people who live in your own house. The insanity is spending millions on specialists and not seeing that the cure was sleeping in the basement. The insanity is believing that money can replace love." His partners didn't understand. They never would. Because some men measure success in numbers, in bank accounts, in properties, in fancy cars. But Richard had learned another way to measure success, in hugs, in words, in time, in presence. He wasn't looking for them to understand anymore. He wasn't looking for approval anymore. He wasn't looking for more anymore. He had found what truly matters. Now, every afternoon, Richard comes home and does something he never did before. He sits in the garden with his grandmother. They drink coffee together. They watch the sunset. And they talk. Or sometimes they don't talk. Sometimes they're just there, together, in silence. And that silence is worth more than all the business meetings in the world. Patricia no longer sees Nana Josie as a burden. She sees her as a gift she almost rejected, a gift she almost sent to the nursing home, a gift that saved her family. The cameras are still installed, but nobody checks them anymore to look for evidence of something bad. Now Richard checks them for another reason: to remember, to never forget, to see, again and again, the moment when a 72-year-old woman taught him what it means to truly love. If you've made it this far, I want you to think about something. Maybe there's someone in your life who loves you in silence, someone who doesn't tell you, someone who doesn't show you in obvious ways, but who is there every night, every early morning, doing something that nobody sees, something that nobody recognizes, something that could change your life if you just paid attention. Richard's cameras didn't find an abuser. They found an angel, a 72-year-old angel, with worn-out knees, with wrinkled hands, with an African song on her lips, and infinite love in her heart. Now I have a question for you, and I want you to think carefully before answering. Who is the silent angel in your life? Who loves you without expecting anything in return? Who is doing something extraordinary while you're not looking? Maybe it's your mother who keeps cooking for you even though you don't live with her anymore. Maybe it's your father who never says "I love you," but gets up early to drive you to work. Maybe it's your grandmother who keeps your photos in her wallet, even though you haven't visited her in months. Maybe it's a neighbor who collects your mail when you're away. Maybe it's a co-worker who always defends you in meetings. Maybe it's someone who is no longer here, and whom you never got to thank. Tell me in the comments. Can you tell me who your Nana Josie is? Because maybe, just maybe, you need to install your own cameras, not to monitor, not to find faults, not to confirm suspicions, to discover, to see what was always there, to thank them before it's too late. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story made you feel something, share it, not for me, for all the Nana Josies of the world, for all the invisible grandmothers, for all the silent loves, who deserve to be seen and who deserve to be recognized, who deserve to be celebrated, before it's too late, until the next story. And remember, true love doesn't make noise. It doesn't ask for applause. It doesn't need recognition. It doesn't expect anything in return. It just exists, silent, constant, eternal. And sometimes you need a camera to see it. Sometimes you need to stop, pay attention, really look at the people beside you. Because the greatest love often comes from the smallest people, from the most ignored, from the most forgotten, from those who everyone thinks are useless, but who are actually everything. Richard's cameras didn't find an abuser. They found something much more valuable. They found proof that love exists, and that sometimes it's closer than we think. We just need to have the courage to look. Nana Josie is still singing, every night, at 3 a.m., the same song, the same melody, the same love, because that's what angels do. They love, without conditions, without limits, without expecting anything in return, until their wings can't take it anymore. And then they rest, knowing they did what they came to do, to love. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening until the end. And thank you for remembering all the Nana Josies of the world, those who are no longer here, and those who are still waiting to be seen. Take care of yours before it's too late.